Welcome to the Erasmus Foundation podcast. My name is Paul Nugent. Are you looking for answers to life and its meaning? Then this may well be the very podcast you need to listen to. In a series of podcasts, we are going to look at the difficult questions of life and apply spiritual knowledge to find out the answers. Hello. Today we are going to look at a little phrase called the analysis of self. And today we have Padina from Spirit to discuss this with us. So greetings, Padina.
Greetings.
My first question to you is it necessary to know yourself?
Well, I would say it is not only necessary, it is essential. Now, in spirit, we know ourselves very well because with a mind which is open, with all the memory that we have of all our lives, all our existence since our beginnings, for some of us many, many, many years ago. And therefore we see with greater clarity our content. And if necessary, we do search quite deeply within ourselves to locate any misgivings, any idiosyncrasies, or any of these more negative aspects of our being that we might then find or not accordingly. And this is how we see these things. But on the earth, where it is very important, as I say, essential, that man should look at himself, try to understand himself. And this is difficult for man. It is much easier in spirit, of course. But for mankind, there is, especially at this time within your world, may I say, a lack of sufficient understanding of spirit to enable mankind to do this as deeply and profoundly as is required.
So what is the purpose then of getting to know yourself?
What is the purpose? Well, by analyzing yourself, by looking quietly within your being, understanding yourself more, your weaknesses, your strengths, you are indeed making yourself more in balance, more correct, by really identifying those things within your being which might have caused an imbalance within your structure, spiritual, and of the earth, of course. So it is important that people at least should see themselves as others see them. And is it not really sad or to be uncomfortable if one was to know that other people could see aspects of your being, your structure, your nature as a person, and if you were blind to some of this, you would not be seeing yourself as others see you. And I would find that very uncomfortable if I was in that situation.
So let me ask you this, Padina. What does it mean to know yourself?
Well, you have an appreciation as much as possible as a person of the earth to know your weaknesses, the flaws of the earth, which might be quite strong within your structure, your psychological structure. And at the same time, it is important to have an appreciation of your strengths as well. So, what I would recommend to somebody, if they were interested to start this analysis on themselves, I would recommend that they make on a piece of paper 2 columns, one showing the weaknesses, the others column which show the strengths, like a debit and credit columns. And the purpose of this is to list your weaknesses and list your strengths. And by this means, to start with, you are identifying parts of your makeup to help you. And in time, as you might think on these things, you would become aware more and more of perhaps your weaknesses and perhaps more strengths that you had not first considered. And in coming to this recognition, you then are beginning to understand and know yourself more and more. And of course, no one is perfect. And everyone, of course, more of the earth have weaknesses, have flaws within their structure, which do not exist at home in spirit, but are flaws within the earth, within the structure of man. And in understanding these, it does not mean that you eradicate them from your being at all, but it means that in becoming aware of what may be part of your makeup, you would endeavor to smooth these imbalances out and try and improve on your ways, your weaknesses in life. And by that means, you are becoming a little more rounded. You are burnishing away those sharp corners, those perhaps a little abrasive parts of your nature, which others might find a little uncomfortable at times. So you are becoming more acceptable, more comfortable to be with, more pleasant as a person, more considerate perhaps, more generous, more many things which others would appreciate. And when you start to do this, it may take months, it may take years as you slowly improve yourself and develop. But people will see how you change and they will recognize those qualities within you which are an improvement because of the work you are doing on yourself.
That's very interesting. Of course, like any job, you need the right tools for it. And I would suggest that you really need to look at yourself in truth to do this correctly.
Indeed, indeed. Yes, there is no point in not being quite honest with yourself. Of course, there is no point to this. The point of the exercise is crucially to identify very clearly, in great clarity, what is within you that is causing perhaps some idiosyncrasy, some phobia, some negativity within your being, something which is not right and should not be there.
Yes, because you can sometimes look at something and go the other way and not accept that you've got a strength and and ignore it because you think that's not a right thing to do, to look at yourself in that way. But I think in the end you have to come back to it time and time again and just keep reassessing it, do you not? It's the only way I've been able to do it.
Yes. I think also it is quite useful to be with other people, learning how they see you at times. And you might, for instance, be in a situation where a person might say something perhaps even offensive to you, or some criticism of you. And you might think, oh, I didn't know I was being selfish, or I hadn't thought of it perhaps in those terms. And that might give you a clue to then think a little deeper. Perhaps that person is wrong and they have not understood you correctly, or for whatever reason, they are not being honest with you. Or they have been honest with you, they have had the courage to offer this to you as something they identify within you. And you might then, instead of dismissing that and rejecting it and becoming a little annoyed at their suggestions, you could be grateful for their honesty and look into yourself a bit deeper. And perhaps then in truth, you would identify some negative weakness. And that would give you then a great opportunity to put that little flaw right as it should be. So that is a positive result. That is the way to look at these things. And that would help you, take you forward, develop you. And it will be very good for you. So sometimes we have a lot to be grateful for with others and what they may say at times.
I think that's interesting because sometimes, Badina, people say things to you, and if you do know yourself and you're honest with yourself about how you see yourself, you can tell whether a person is saying something that isn't right, or or as you say, or obvious one would be that someone's saying something and you hadn't realized that was part of you, and hopefully go away and try and correct that. But sometimes people say something to you, don't they? And you think, hold on, you're not talking about me. I'm not like that at all.
Which might be true.
Which may be true, yes. Yes, but sometimes people can just say things just to be hurtful. So it is a difficult process, isn't it?
It is. But then if you take the time and you make the effort to go quietly within yourself in a meditation, or however you may wish to do this, and then analyze what has been said and how that then identifies with you or not, then this might help you to discover something hidden away deep within you, which has been there all the time, but you had not quite recognized it. You had not really quite seen it as it is. And that then is a very, very useful exercise, because you are seeing a part of yourself that perhaps others recognize it, which you have been a little blind to.
Yes.
And that in the reawakening and discovering what is there, really, I would offer to you, gives you great joy, because you are learning more and more about yourself. You are becoming more at peace with yourself.
Yes.
And you are gaining more confidence, because you are seeing yourself in great clarity. And that is a very, very good exercise.
Do you think that people really care about this and would wish to do such a thing?
I would say, generally speaking, within your world at this time, then most probably not. There will be some, of course, who do know this and take this more seriously and do think on this, as they should do. And philosophers and people of wisdom all through the ages have always said, know thyself. It is a statement which has been repeated by many and has great meaning, great purpose. And I would say in the future, as your world becomes more aware spiritually and wants to develop and learn more, people will adopt this simple exercise, because it will be recognized as how important it really is.
The issue that I found when I started doing this, Bettina, was the fact that at one side of the coin, we get to know ourselves, and the other side, we have to try and diminish ourselves in some way, because they say that an old spirit should subjugate himself or herself, and I perfectly understand that. So this process of doing that is to find your true self is again something that I struggled with, and I just wonder whether you give any advice on this.
Well, if somebody is truly, in the right sense of the word, in a dignified way, humble, perhaps that is too strong a word, but I would say if they are well balanced and do not have an overinflated ego, then they may already, by their nature, subjugate themselves sufficiently. So that may not necessarily be an exercise that was necessary for all people. But it is true to say that very often one might recognize where a person does have a very strong ego and want to make them to be seen a little, as Erasmus would say, puffed up. And it is right to be a little prideful of things that you achieve and you do in life, but to be over proud, over prideful, is not really correct. So again, that is just one aspect, one of the flaws within the nature of man, which you might identify, look at, and to see whether it actually complies within your being or not.
The flaw of self is quite strong on the earth at the moment, isn't it, Virginia?
I would say all the flaws are
Okay.
very, very apparent, very strong within the world. Because, again, the way man has developed, he's left this understanding and knowledge behind him in previous civilizations. He has lost the awareness of the importance of knowing about such things. But that must come back, because it is not recognized or it is dismissed in this time, is really evident of showing how imbalanced your world has become, because man is not in balance. So for man to return to balance, then it starts with the individual getting to know themselves as much as they possibly can, to enable them to then return to a more balanced state. And that in turn will help and develop this world and bring it back into sanity and good health.
Lastly, then, what are the benefits to get to know yourself? What are the benefits of this?
I think the most important, the most obvious benefit is finding within yourself a peace, an inner peace, which comes with this gain of confidence, which you do gain as you come to know yourself more. And life still may impact upon you painfully or in many ways, as life on the earth does. But in some ways, you may be able to accept and manage these difficulties and challenges at times by being stronger and more at peace with yourself.
The Erasmus Foundation is a spiritual teaching and healing foundation based in Laxfield, Suffolk, in the United Kingdom. We have a webpage, www.erasmus-foundation.org. If you would like to be a guest on our podcast, or indeed have further questions for us, then please contact me on paul@erasmus-foundation.org, and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Thank you very much for listening.